Alright guys, it's finally happening. My Sprinter van just showed up here. Matt, what's up, man? Good, how are you? On one hand, I am so super scared of what I just got myself into in trying to build a van from the ground up, but on the other hand, I know it's all gonna work out. I know it's all gonna come together, and I know that I'm just gonna learn so very much from it at the end. And 3 to 4 months later, and be looking back at this just being like, what was I so afraid of, I guess. Well, those 3 to 4 months really turned into about 6.5 months, and I would say the van is about 98% complete. It was a wild ride, basically from May all the way up until now. This isn't like a van tour or anything like that, but kind of just wanted to throw together one video that kind of shows just exactly kind of how I built the van. This isn't going to be step by step. I would kind of recommend going into the individual episodes if you're curious more in one topic, but I want to just try to give you guys an overview on how exactly I went about building this van with no experience and just doing this for my first time with one drill battery, one extension cord, literally the most bare minimum amount of tools you could use for a van. So when I had received the van initially, it was entirely a work van. There's basically a bunch of tools and just shelves of really thick plywood in the van that I had to take out before I could even start building. So it took me about the better part of a whole weekend of just removing everything, cleaning everything out, and just getting it to an empty shell. On top of the inside being quite a mess, the owner also had like decals from his company on the outside of the van, and so I spent basically a whole nother weekend removing that and buffing out the entire Sprinter van. I am basically gonna buff the entire Sprinter van. Look at how it just lifts up all this dirt. So now the inside was all cleaned and now the exterior was all clear, ready to go. It's kind of like a mental thing where I was like, okay, now I can start the actual build. So the first 2 things I did in the van was install my swivel seat and put in the Max Air fan vent. I am getting super frustrated. They said it's just a 30-minute install and it's literally taken me all day. And about a whole day later, I have myself a swivel seat. I'm about to cut a hole in the middle of my van. And now the moment of truth is, will this trim piece fit? Money. After we did that, I started laying like the extra lumber down, and I built out an entire subfloor, which is basically just a reinforced layer that goes right on the chassis of the floor to add support to the floor and also allow it so you can add some insulation in between the floor and like the actual metal chassis, if that makes sense. So I was able to put about 3/4 inch like foam board or 1/2 inch, something like that. It wasn't a ton of insulation, but at least the floor is kind of off the ground more. So that took me about 3-4 days working on it at night after work and things like that. But I'm really glad I did that because it just added this whole rigid floor underneath the existing floor. Basically, my idea is to run a series of horizontal and vertical sort of furring strips throughout this area to also act as nailers for all my framework and my build and my cabinets and stuff, but also give me a space where I can put some insulation in there as well. So I'm basically gonna start zipping some of these out and then line them up through here. And so then piggybacking off the subfloor, I was able to start strapping or putting like wall studs up or furring strips, and it was probably one of the projects I was looking forward to the most because I felt like I just understood it and I had like a clean attack plan, I guess. So I basically did all of the wall studs, the roof rafters, and ran all of my electrical wires in about one weekend. Living with 24 1x3x8s and a splinter, so that's always nice.
This is where the real muscle comes in. I'm using a number 14 screw by 1.5 inches, self-tapper. Make sure you get a good grip on this, and there, it's biting, and then bingo. Nice and flush. There you go. It's your standard red wire here. It's 12 gauge wire. I'm running everything 12 gauge, which is a whole nother discussion in terms of your gauging of wire. I'm putting...
Now the one thing that I did not do in this van was put the windows in. For some reason I just didn't trust myself to cut the entire like slider window out and the rear windows out. So I did bring my van down to a place in Salt Lake City that put in the windows for me. I think in my next build I definitely would do the windows, but for some reason it just was like, man, if this goes wrong, just trying to fix it to me was more frightening than doing it. So I brought them down to, I think, New Image Vans, and they did a great job installing my windows.
And I'm putting a window here on the slider door, and then 2 windows here on the back door. How you doing, Dang?
You have a key for me?
Yeah. Here's a key. Windows are in their boxes.
So you want a window right here?
Right here.
And the 2 in the back.
2 in the back, yes sir.
And then probably one of the most important things in my build was the insulation. I went back and forth for a long time before I got to the insulation about like the method I was going to use, and I was set on spray foam for such a long time because just kind of how tight they can get the insulation, and kind of how it can be done in like just 3-4 hours, and take it to someone, they spray and it's done. But through more research, that really wasn't the route I wanted to go, largely due to just kind of the chemicals and stuff involved in spray foam. So I went to a whole different avenue and used Havelock sheep wool.
How many bags of those? Is it 1 bag, 2? You can just put them here for now. That's tight. Appreciate that, man.
Have a good one.
I can't remember if I showed you guys this yesterday or not, but when it comes to like the walls and even the ceiling here, I use this like mold and rot resistant twine that I just got at Home Depot to and I just kind of wired it like through some of the holes here to kind of hold my insulation, and same thing with up here. This has basically been the way I've been doing this entire van. I just literally tear sheets off with my hands and just really stuff it back in different cavities and areas, and really just try to fill up as much as I can, because really the more you have, the better insulated it's gonna be.
Another massive step in the van build was getting my headliner shelf cut and installed. And this is kind of the area above the cab, where right above your head, I guess, where you'd be driving. But basically, I just cut a shelf and I put a shelf above the cab. So now I can use all of that room above the headliner, which is just probably one of my most favorite parts about the build. The amount of space you have up there, it's almost like never ending.
And the cut is done. I think it went pretty well. I think there's gonna be a few areas I'm gonna need to just kind of refine a little bit. Well, it's a pretty snug fit, which I guess is good. I might trim like just a little bit, like an 1/8 inch off, because if I wrap it with fabric, it's gonna take up even a little more space. So I think just to be safe, I might just need to trim this off just ever so slightly.
One of the coolest parts that I love about the van is my aluminum side ladder. This came in the mail in like this huge freaking box, and this was probably one of the easier things I did with the build. But putting this up, installing it on the side of the van, and having access to get up on the roof and see the solar panel and all that stuff was super key. Not really like totally necessary, but I 100% recommend it.
How sick is this thing? I basically slid in these bolts into the track here, used their L brackets, and then just screwed right into the side of the ladder there. And that's about it. The bottom bracket is just a little more complex. I am gonna have to drill about 3 holes into the pinch weld here, but it shouldn't be anything crazy. And the super lightweight aluminous ladder, like 25 pounds, is now installed on the side of the van.
Once I had the ladder on the side, I was then able to kind of do the projects that required me to get up on the roof. There are companies that sell solar panel racks, but like with anything else, they're just more expensive than if you could totally do it yourself. So I think I bought like 2 angle irons from Home Depot for like 40 bucks each. It holds my 320 watt Renogy solar panel up there, low profile, and like I said, it's adjustable. So if I need to raise it up or lower it down, I can do all that. So this was a really fun project to do.
You kind of got to just kind of keep your thumb just close enough so you can just see, and then you just pull back.
We just used aluminum angle irons from Home Depot. So that's what these big 90-degree looking bars are. There's one here, and then there's one on the back. So this is basically a 3/8 stainless steel carriage bolt. These are all stainless steel parts with a fender washer underneath here, and then another nut on top of that. And then there's another nut, if you can see that, I think you can, right underneath the angle iron, which is acting as our spacer. So really this whole thing is adjustable. Then I'm gonna put a lock washer on top here and then cap it off with this nut that you guys see here.
Once I kind of got the roof stuff situated, I was basically just in the clear to really just smash out the rest of the build. I think I was still about like 2-3 months out at this point, just because of how many details and just intricacies come along with building a van, obviously. But basically from this point, I was able to start to hook up my batteries because I had the solar up there and set up ready to go. And I think I slowly just started building out different sections of the van. I started with the bed, kind of got the bed area figured out because a lot of stuff revolved around where the bed was. I knew I wanted about like a 42-inch kitchen, I think is what I measured. So as long as I was, you know, close to that, I would just kind of shift the kitchen to make sure that the bed was fine, if that makes sense. So I did the bed first to make sure that was all good, and then whatever I had left for the kitchen, that's what I utilized.
All right, so I know this doesn't look like too much right now, but we basically have the entire bed designed, measured, cut, and really ready to secure to the frame. You can see basically how it would come out here, and this is gonna be the walkway area right through here. We basically have 2 different lengths here. The long ones are all the fixed ones. So again, we're using 1x2s because I think it would give the most even distribution of weight and a lot of support when you pull it out, if that makes sense, rather than using a bigger wood, because each wood plank would be greater spaced apart. You'd have a longer distance where there's no wood, if that makes sense. So by having a smaller distance, you have more wood, but there's less of a gap in between each plank, if that makes sense.
So the ceiling was a lot of fun to put up. And it really brought the van to life, I think. And once I started to see some of the finishing pieces, the finishing woods, it like almost gave me a second wind in the build process. Like, yeah, we're doing this, and 2, like it's only going to look better and better as you keep layering things on. So I just used a tongue and groove knotty pine ceiling, 3/8 inch thick. So I went with really thin wall, ceiling, floor to preserve as much height and width as I can. So you can get like an inch tongue and groove, but I ordered it, waited like 3 weeks, and got 3/8 inch. So it's super thin, very fragile, but it's up, and I think it looks awesome, and I have a ton of headroom.
It's pretty early in the morning here on Sunday. I need to finish preparing the ceiling. It's probably gonna take me 2-3 hours still, so grab some coffee and start prepping.
Can you go your way?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Probably 1/2 inch. I'm good. And that's how it's done. Look at how awesome this looks here. Like tucked really nicely just behind here.
And then from there, it's kind of like I had the skeleton already done, so it's just kind of a matter of like filling in the blanks. I created all of the cabinetry entirely handmade, literally cut with a skill saw. This was before I used the table saw, which is like a whole nother discussion in terms of like what tools you like need to build a van. One is a table saw. That's really like your first thing. We kind of put all of the oak finishing pieces on there to kind of cap everything off. And then it was just a matter of kind of filling out the kitchen. So apart from tiling the whole thing with subway tile, we built a base kitchen cabinet, used butcher block countertop, and just kind of cut holes for our appliances. Once we had the kitchen in and the cabinets were up, the van really had taken shape and it was just about done. Really the last thing we had to do was put the floor down, which was probably one of the easiest things we did. We waited until the end to do the floor because it felt like it was just a little bit easier to do it and kind of fit it into where the cabinets are rather than laying a floor down first and then putting everything on top of it and risk it kind of getting scuffed up and stuff. I just did the floor last. I think it's important to note that this was just kind of how I did things, and the process to me, in my mind, like how it made sense, but there's literally a million ways you could have done this, and I kind of bounce around from project to project in terms of like how the weather was and really just what materials I had at the time. So I think I could have been more efficient with my time in terms of ordering stuff and just making sure I'm ordering stuff ahead of time for the projects I know are gonna be coming up. I kind of did a project and was like, what's my next project? Okay, I need to order the ceiling, but the ceiling was 3 weeks out, you know? So I think this could have been done in a lot less time, but it's a cool experience, and I hope this kind of sheds some light on the process that I went through. Obviously there is a ton missing. My heater, all of the electrical, just all the little trim pieces, the painting. Oh God, I'm trying to think, like hooking up all the lights, running the switches, just doing all the other appliances like the water pump, the floodlights, my cell booster. Like there's still so much more that went into this. So I don't want to make it seem like oh, it's just this simple, you know? It's simple, but it's a lot of work. If you have been following along for like the whole series, which there's a bunch of you that have, this might just kind of be repetitive and boring, but maybe if you are just kind of circling back to seeing how things are going, this could be a cool video because it kind of is like one big recap. And I've been wanting to do this, but I didn't know the best way to kind of fit everything in there. So I'm getting ready to go on about a 7-day road trip in the Southwest around Arizona and the Grand Canyon, things like that. I think with 2 of my sisters. So I think we're gonna be fitting 3 people in my van, which is going to be either disastrous, a lot of fun, or a mix of the 2 throughout this week. So thank you guys so very much for watching. The fun is just getting started. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments about the build. I'd love to connect with you guys. Anyways, take it easy, fam. I'll see all of you guys in the next one.